Alrighty. So we're going to go back to the original worksheets, which I sent an updated link to. And again, this is not my strength is not the technological stuff. I didn't do this. I didn't switch it.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I usually unlock it. I'll open it. I didn't unlock it. Oh, man. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. They tried to call me, I guess. Okay, great. Okay, so we'll start now. Okay. So what we'll be doing is we'll be going back to with the core concepts sheets, with these which you printed last week, they'll be blended over time. Okay, we'll put them all together. Great. Okay. Okay. So let's go to page 4 of the original docs, and let's put some pieces back together. Okay, we said the term zikaron when and again we're learning these as core concepts, right? To use in this context and every place else. So when you see the term zikaron, it's a forward plan to recast the past and establish the present, right? It's a forward-going plan to recast what was and establish now, today. Okay, so it works. Let's talk about it for a minute on a personal individual level. All right, we got papers all over the place, right? Okay, thanks. That's good. Okay. And it works in a general way as well. We said on a personal level, right? On a personal level, a person frames what he or she wants for himself. As a result of that, recasts what was, right? A negative can become a positive because it's a building block to a future plan. And in that sense, the present is different. So future, past, present. When we see the line zikaron, we're talking future, past, present. Good. Now, when we talk about Zecher Amalek, for example, we'll talk about that in a little while. We're gonna talk about that this way as well. The whole idea of the Zecher and Amalek, and we want to get off the term remember, and we want to get to the term recast, to reestablish. Okay. So when we're going future, past, present, we look at what we want, we recast what was, good or otherwise, as a result of what it pushed me in the direction of, and we stand in a different place. So from a ratzon point of view, we say that our ratzon was changed, the ratzon is modified, right? The will of the person, which is a driving element of where the person ends up, is different. And therefore, because the ratzon is different, the person is different, and he stands differently before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay? So the change of ratzon yields the change of status, which means that hi, Diane.
Hi, Ricky. Hi, everybody.
Nice to see you. Which means that if someone tells a lady, "Harei at mikudeshet li, al menat she'ehyeh tzaddik," now, because that's what I want, I'm going to change my stripes, the person says, it's considered kiddushin because the change of ratzon yields a change of reality. So, headline is zikaron, right? Zikaron. We're going to see it on a personal context. We're going to see it in general terms of Am Yisrael. We're going to see it in terms of holidays. We're going to see it in terms of enemies and otherwise. It goes back to ratzon, which is the will, and we accept an immediate change of will, and the will is the driving factor in the person. Okay, so now, if there's an immediate change of will, then the person is different. And if the person made a mistake or did something wrong, al pi halacha, that person who would have been subjected to some type of accountability for that is no more because he changed his will. So even though the action stood, the action wasn't repaired, the person redefined himself, the person is no longer culpable for the consequences of that action. This is very, very important, okay? And because there's halachic implications here. Now, if that's true, that someone could reach forward heartfully, right? Mindfully, didn't do anything, didn't put any facts on the ground. Person goes ahead and says, from this point on, I'm going to say Birkat Hamazon every time I have bread, and let's say that person didn't do it in the past, right? When he makes that commitment, the fact that the negative that was is transformed to a positive, and he stands in a different place vis-a-vis that action. Yeah.
When people take something on for the merit of someone else.
Leave that a minute. Leave that a minute. We'll talk about that in a little while. Okay, leave that. It's a little bit outside, so I'll hold it for a few minutes. Good. Okay, now, if that's true, that the transformation is instant, then where does Rachamim and Kapara, where do those elements come into the picture? Where does Rachamim come into the picture? And where does Kapara come into the picture? And what are the differences?
When we talked about Rachamim, I think allowing the space to have this process.
Beautiful. So Rachamim allows the space, gives a person time to make that decision. So Rachamim is the space between what the person did in the past and his or her decision to change it going forward. So Rachamim is the pause period, the period where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to exact judgment for what happened. Good? That's what, okay, good. Now, what is kapara? What is kapara? How is kapara different from Rachamim? What do you say?
I'm already still on Rachamim being the Rechen, being the womb, being the space that allows
Beautiful.
for a person to be reborn and renew.
Beautiful.
And Kapara is too long for me to
Oh, okay.
go into my own Kapara.
So kaparot are events or things that suspend punishment. So, for example, Yom Kippur, it brings kapara. So the kapara is in a situation where the rachamim was expended, so to speak, right? It never really ends, but let's say it was somewhat expended, and the person had that opportunity to change. There'll be another round of kapara where the punishment is due, but suspended. So rachamim comes in to hold off on the punishment. Kapara comes in where the punishment is due, but it's a suspended sentence. Okay, now, where we roll further with this is that so now we have an interesting paradigm in halakha. Halakha is based on action, but the thought transforms the action, right? My thought to change in the future changed the fact that I put on the ground 2 years ago or 3 minutes ago. The thought going forward, the machshava, changes the action. This is very important, right? Which gives us a little bit of an opening to something we're going to see more of later on, which is the level of importance of thought in the whole picture. So someone can do action A with thought A, and it's looked upon a certain way in God's eyes. Someone could do action A with thought B, and it's looked upon as a completely different thing. But what do you mean? They both did the same action. It's true, but the action and the thought are coupled together to establish the reality of that thing. All right? So you see the ratzon and the thought has immense power. And okay, so far we're okay? Okay, great. Now this gives us another interesting thing in halakha, and that's called hatarat nidarim. What is a hatarat nidarim? We do it every year, right? We're very, very on it in our community. First of all, what is a neder? What's-
It's almost like a promise to do something.
Right. So does the person have to use the term promise or not? No, good. The person has to make a commitment, something that's viewed as a. Now, we have different levels of nedarim, what people use God's name, the sadish. Okay, we're not going to get there now, right? Interrupt me any minute you want, because I see the legs moving.
I'm just thinking of a beautiful saying from Aviva Zornberg.
Go.
She said, the space between the mouth and the hand is a perilous place.
Uh-huh.
It's her way of saying that for nedarim, we allow our words to take the place of our actions.
Very nice. Very nice.
And not hatarat nedarim, I'm sorry, for nedarim.
For the neder itself.
When we make a neder, we're using our words instead of using our hands, instead of
nice.
using our actions.
Very nice.
And then she says, and then the hands have to pay the price.
That's right.
that they-
that's
that-
right.
That the words make.
That's right. Beautiful.
Since
Yeah.
the thought is so powerful, could you actually make an edit with a thought?
Oh, it's a tremendous question. We're going to answer your question in 2 minutes. It's a tremendous question. If I verbalize the neder, right? I verbalize something. I made a commitment. How can I uproot the commitment? We do hatarat nedarim. We matir the neder. We literally uproot it. Now, go back to what we said. We have zikaron, which is future, past, present. Because I know where I want to go. I change where I was to create a new X. The reality right now is new. Reuven punched him in the nose over here. He made a decision that going forward, he will never punch another person or try to never punch another person in the nose. He thinks he understands why he punched him in the nose. That's important. Therefore, this go forward commitment reframes this, takes off the need for punishment, frames as a positive building block, and recast the person right here. Good, right, good. Now,
But isn't a neder something that's a thought in your
Huh?
head?
What's
Isn't a neder something that you think about? Like,
no, another is something I verbalize. So that's the Sarah's question. What about thinking about it? We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. But right now, we're talking about a neder that a person verbalizes.
It says, "Asher yatzami piv."
That's right. Asher Yatzami Piv. Exactly. Beautiful. That he said he verbalized. Good. So how do we change something we verbalized? Use the model that I just gave you. How do we change it?
Well, if a thought can uproot an action, then what can uproot something verbal? Verbal versus, it sounds like verbal will uproot verbal. So when we say
Excellent. Verbal will uproot verbal based on what?
Hatarat nedarim, like I'm saying,
That I end up in Hatarat Nedarim. Excellent. So what's the method I'm using? I made a commitment, a go forward commitment, right? Great. So that sets a path for me going forward. I reflect back on the day or consequences that I made the commitment. I understand that I didn't understand those consequences. I didn't understand all the elements of this commitment. And therefore, I go back and I say, had I understood things the way they really were, vis-a-vis this thing, I never would have made it. Therefore, I take my forward commitment, I push it to what the elements were that established it. If the elements that would establish it was something that I didn't understand clearly or properly, I say, had I understood that, I never would have done that. And therefore, if I would never have done it because I didn't understand it that way, then my machshava changed. It doesn't apply to me anymore.
what if the situation changed?
So the situation was X when a person made the commitment. Now the situation is Y. Beautiful. Were the elements for the change here? Was there a possibility that the elements that brought that change, hi Shelley, a handful of months later, is it possible that they were in somewhere already? They were cooking, they were festering, or
I
no?
don't know, I mean, small example, I tell my kids that we take you here at this and that, I mean it when I say it, and after maybe something comes up, I can't take,
Very
I
good.
don't know. But I
Perfect.
know at the time
That's
it was
exactly
the
what we're
emotion.
talking about. That is exactly what we're talking about. You didn't take into consideration that during that time, something else could come up and preclude you from being able to do that. Now, you could shake your head, but that's the basis of it, right? I'm not a magician and I'm not a fortune teller. I can't assume everything. Now, you can't do this every 10 minutes, right? But
Ricky, I have a question. Are you trying to, not you, is there a connection between Rachamim and what we're talking about?
for sure, the Rachamim
Like
is
the space, it's the space.
right. Rachamim is the space, but we use that space, right? We use it, but more important than that is knowing the model. I shouldn't be afraid to say I made a commitment based on X, and guess what? I didn't consider the fact that I wanted to change my life to go in that direction. Well, what do you mean? Well, what do you mean? What I mean is very simple. When I made this commitment, I thought I was going to be playing tennis 5 days a week, whatever it might be. And now I realized that playing tennis 5 days a week is not for me. So therefore, the commitment that I made to do this thing with the tennis, I can't uphold that commitment. Well, what do you mean? Didn't you make a commitment? Yeah, I did. But when I made that commitment, I didn't understand an element of me that I now understand.
Which is what?
I wouldn't fall under.
He doesn't like tennis.
So commitments don't mean anything.
So good. So we could abuse anything in Judaism, right? We could abuse anything, and God doesn't really.
There's a lot of leeway here.
Huh?
There's a lot
But
of
I
leeway.
want you to know the leeway. It goes back to to what we've been talking about, right? Goes back to giving ourselves room, being constantly assessing where we are, doing it objectively without emotion. If I know the structure, if I know the system, I'm going to be more comfortable. Now, ideally, it makes us more serious, not less, but it takes away all the baggage. It's halachic, it's clear, it's black and white. Yeah.
I think it's meant to say, yes, there's a lot of leeway, but it should be treated with gravity. That there should be, it's not, you shouldn't be cavalier. This is like, well, I can say whatever I want. but it's-
Yeah, God, you can't sketch God, that's for sure.
I don't think we're going that far. I'm
Right.
just saying, it just, there's always an out. I don't
You know
know.
something? Most of the time there's an out.
Okay.
Good. And you know something? For disingenuous people, God still will call them out as being disingenuous. Right? But for the sincere person, yes, that's right. Yeah. Hayom Harat Olam. I thought I made a commitment doing X yesterday, but you know what? I don't want that in my life anymore. It doesn't make me happy. It doesn't feel good. But one second, you made the commitment 24 hours ago. You thought it made you happy then? Yes. You know what? I learned something new 10 minutes ago. Go with it. What do we do? What do we tend to do? Because we're so westernized. We put this stuff on our backs and we carry it and we carry it and we carry it. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the rabbis say, what are you carrying it for? Move, grow. Chava.
Serene said something brilliant, we just gotten swept over. The Torah calls a neder le'ased isur al nafsho. You're actually putting yourself in jail. You're
Yeah.
imprisoning yourself.
Beautiful.
So when you make a neder, you're literally putting bars on you. But by the same token, she said, you're the one that put up those bars.
Right.
You're the one that holds those keys. So to answer to your question is, yes, there is a sense of responsibility you have when you say the words, but then Serena is going to come and say, but since you're the one that said those words, you hold the keys to literally change yourself, change your circumstances, and change those obligations. And you could, like Ricky says, get yourself out of the jail. You have to remember how you got in there. We
Yeah.
only think that we are carrying the baggage, but we don't realize that we put the baggage. on
That's right.
ourselves.
That's right. Hi, Carol. How are you?
Thank you.
We put the bag, right? We put the bag in. So, but we do this without making a neder. We make these commitments to things, to people, to this, that, and we think we have to hold on to them for reasons that are not Torah reasons. The Torah is meant to liberate us from all the false gods, from all the false commitments, excuse me for saying it, sorry, but from anything that's going to make us unhappy. Sorry, everybody. I don't want to take away all your doom and gloom in one shot. It might take a little more time, you know? But this is it. Now, of course, to Vivian's point, and we could talk about it more in depth in the context of Torah connects would be great. You can't make a commitment on something you already committed to, for example, right? You can't make a commitment on something that you're obligated not to do. Anything halachic. You can't make a commitment on something that you're already committed to. You're already committed to it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the rabbis committed you to X. You can't make a neder to do X if you're already committed to X. You can't, it's not chal. It doesn't sit on it, right? It doesn't sit on it, okay? So if we're cavalier about anything, obviously it doesn't work. But otherwise, to Vivian's point, you know, hapesha asad ze hapesha metir, right? The mouth that took it on is the mouth that could remove it.
But you said before when you're doing the whole, all right, and I'm gonna be Shomer Shabbat, you are committed to be Shomer Shabbat. So how does that work? When you said you can't make an edit.
Okay, beautiful. So your question, Sarah, is great. Now, what if after he proposed, then he changes his mind?
No, but you said you can't make a neder on something you're supposed to,
Already.
do, you're committed to do anyway, that you're commanded to do, that's your.
Very nice.
Shomer
No.
Shabbat.
He doesn't. He's not making a neder. This is different. I'm sorry, but you're right. Thank you. We'll clarify it. He's not making a neder that is going to be Shomer Shabbat.
Basing it on that condition.
Yeah, he's saying I'm becoming Shomer Shabbat. You're right. It's similar. You're right. It's similar. So because he can undo his neder, if he undid his neder, we'd have a big problem, because they will be rabbinically wed, and now they would have to get a get. Because for the
But
minute,
that shouldn't be a neder, is what I'm
It's
saying.
not a neder, it's changing of his will.
it's
That's not
changing
neder.
his will, right?
So why is he held to that? If that changes, that's not a neder.
No. You're calling it a neder.
I'm
I'm-
saying it
yeah.
can't be a neder.
A what?
It cannot be a neder.
And so it cannot be an neder,
It-
right? I think that's right. It is a change of will. It's not a neder.
Okay.
I think that's right. I want to think about it a little more. We don't look at it as a
Already
neder.
rabbinically ordained. You
Right.
can't make a neder on something that's
Well,
already.
that's right. You
rabbinic.
can't make a neder on something you're obligated to do, right? So it's not a neder. Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that situation's not. a neder.
Right. So it's a change of that on. Great. Good.
You
Okay.
created monsters over here.
Yeah. It's great.
You're gonna go to law school next.
Okay. So what's the difference between a person who has this methodology and model and a person who doesn't? Leaving aside the people who abuse it, nobody's abusing it now, right? Right. To your question, it'll be someone who, might want to, but leaving aside the person who wants to abuse it, what's the model for serious, sincere people? What does this do?
I guess they're willing to take more risks if they know they have the safety net.
That's right. That's right. We don't become risk adverse, and we try and we test and we build and we grow and we have more confidence in things, because you know what? We don't ever say things like it is what it is, or what do you want? Or we don't ever resign ourselves to X. Never. We never do it.
When you're making a neder, do you swear?
No, you don't have to swear. You don't have to swear. I mean, you could, but in order for it to be considered a neder, you don't have to swear.
You just have to say it, what you want to
Just
do.
have to make a commitment. Yeah. Say it in a commitment type of way. That's considered a neder.
Because your words are so strong.
That's right.
That when you make the neder, it creates something.
That you're
and
creating the
then-
reality.
And then you also have that same strength to create.
To
the next
change it.
reality.
Good.
Change
Now,
it.
to
Or a better
Sarah's
rea- better
question,
reality.
right, great, perfect. Because my words define my reality. Now, what about if I made a neder in my head? So this becomes a very difficult question. It's a very difficult question because on the one hand, we say that thought is real. On the other hand, we can't really say it. So you enter into a really nasty little place where it's going to be a very hard thing. For example, let me give you an example. When we say that lo tisna achicha b'vavecha, right? You can't hate a person in your heart, right? Or v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. These are heartfelt mitzvot that may and may not ever get expressed in language or in action. So what does that mean? It means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, sometimes in certain respects, when it comes to something like a perspective about people in general, will hold us accountable for what we're thinking or feeling. Sometimes he will. We also hold that mitzvot tzrichot kavanah, right? Which means that a mitzvah has to be done with the intent connected to it. But the reality is most people can't do that these days. So what do? We give a person a pass on the level of kavanah that was originally intended when mitzvot were fashioned, right? It used to be that if someone was traveling, right? Traveling was very difficult. You'd get home and you'd have 3 days to get your head together before you had to start praying again. Why? Because prayer without kavanah didn't mean anything. Today, we say, wait a minute, nobody has kavanah. So therefore, even if you pray without kavanah, you get the credit for praying, although you lost the real opportunity because you weren't heartfully and thoughtfully involved in it. So the question of what the machshava, how far it goes, is a very big question. It's really somewhat specific to the area or the category, because the person will be held accountable for the negative feelings he has in his heart about another Jew. He will be held accountable for that, whether he ever articulates them or acts on them or not. And of course, to the positive, he'll be credited for all the good feeling he has towards another person, whether he articulates it or acts on it or not. But then when we come to other areas, we end up in a very hard space because people don't have kavanah like they used to, right? People are running and doing and busy, and now we're iPhoning, and right? What were people doing 500 years ago, right? They were spending an hour preparing to pray before they prayed, or more. So it's a fuzzy area, and we have to look at it in a category by category basis. Good. Okay. Okay. Ben Azai says, do you have something?
But I have a question about that.
Yeah.
sorry. So thoughts, I think, they're the beginning stages of action.
Right.
So if someone, let's say, makes a neder in his thought, but doesn't say it, but then acts on the thought, does it become the neder?
That's
Once
right.
there's an action there, does it become? even
Once
if he
it's
didn't say it,
verbalized, it doesn't even have to be an action.
But I'm
Oh,
saying.
but he never verbalized it. Yeah,
right,
for sure.
thought
It's
to action,
for sure.
Then it.
Yes, great.
solidifies
Yes.
as a neder?
For
Okay.
sure. Great. The area that Vivian mentioned, which is that I can't make a neder on something I'm already obligated on, is a fascinating area in Jewish law. If you're obligated to keep Shabbat, you can't make a neder about Shabbat. Who cares about your neder? You're already obligated to keep it. So your neder isn't chal. It never takes root. It doesn't mean anything. So a lot of the stuff that we make nedarim on don't mean anything anyway.
Yeah, we think.
Right, beautiful. That we think we made nedarim never took, because
So why would anyone make a neder?
that's a great question, Sarah. And really, it's very strongly frowned upon. Nedarim are very strongly frowned upon. Why would anybody make one?
Like a Nazir, you could think about.
Yeah, and a Nazir, right? A Nazir is very, very strongly frowned upon. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, turns to the Nazir and he tells him, I didn't give you enough halachot, enough commitments to get close to me. You think you need more?
More.
What is that? And by the way, Midat Chassidut is the same thing. And I'm going to take a position on this when we get to the second half of the book. I'm not a big Chassidut fan. Okay, I'm not talking about Hasidic groups like Chabad, this, that, none. I'm talking about Chassidut in the perspective of the Ramchal, which talks about a lifnim mishurat hadin. Lifnim mishurat hadin means the din is X, we should be here before X. And I'm going to present his opinion on that, but I'm going to tell you that I don't think that applies well to our time and place, because I think it throws us back to the stuff that we really want to be off of, which is the slippery slopes, the guilt, the emotionally ridden assessments, All that comes back into the picture when halacha is not my bottom line. If halacha is my bottom line, that's enough. That's enough, right? We spend a lifetime trying to figure out all the halachot. So I don't need more than halacha. Okay, we'll get there. Okay. Ratz the mitzvah kala kebechamura, boreach mina avera, shemitzvah goreret mitzvah, avera goreret avera. The Hebrew got messed up. I have to learn how to do it right. Sachar mitzvah mitzvah, schar avera avera. Let's do it in English. Ben Azai says, be quick in performing a minor commandment as in a major one and free from transgression. Flee. For one commandment leads to another, and transgression leads to another transgression. What does that mean? We touched on this, right? What does it mean?
It's that same concept of once you lean towards something, you're going to continue in that direction. So if
Excellent.
you're leaning towards mitzvot, hopefully you're continuing and growing in that area. But if you're leaning away from that and towards the negative or towards averot, then you're going to
Beautiful.
continue.
So how does this work?
Slippery slope.
Beautiful. How does it work? How does it work?
Physics.
Huh? It's physics. No, it is physics. It's Torah's physics. How does it work? What do you say? How does it work? Huh? How does it work? Okay, but tell me how it works.
Law of attraction.
The law of attraction. Beautiful. So explain that. Explain it, Diane. How does
I should explain.
this
Well,
concept?
whatever you put out there, you get back.
What?
Whatever you put out into the universe, it'll come to you.
Right. Okay. So it goes like this. A basic mitzvah, something that I do mindlessly, right? Going back to the thought element of this, which is so impregnated with power and meaning. A meaningless mitzvah is not going to do anything.
Like, wow.
Right? I'm doing something in a robotic way. I'm doing something in a mechanical way. That's not going to bring anything else in my path. But to Sarah's point, which is how we've been basing this on, right? On a mom's perspective, if I'm leaning in a certain direction, wanting to build my life in a certain direction, and I'm thoughtfully engaging X, that means my whole movement, everything around me, right? What did you call it? The law of attraction? Yeah, Diane, that's what it's
Yes.
called?
Yes.
So that's going to drive this stuff to me. So it's a mindful machshava-based ma'aseh, which is going to bring these things to me. This is the Torah law of attraction. Now that's a very big statement. What does that mean? What does it mean?
Focusing on the practice, then you're not going to really get the purpose.
Beautiful. If you're focusing on the practice, you're not going to get the purpose, and you don't beget the good. The good doesn't bring the good. If the good that you're doing is mindful and intentional and immersive, then that changes the game completely.
We're back to Kavanah.
Beautiful. Back to Kavanah. Excellent. Beauty. Now, what does that yield? It yields a certain reality. What is the reality that it yields? Mindful. I'm leaning in a certain direction mindfully. I do the mitzvot with intent. I'm thinking when I pray, and really the best barometer, in my opinion, is prayer. It's the best barometer of all, because prayer has to be spent slowly, carefully, with real care, with real intent. Otherwise, what you do? It doesn't mean anything, right? So if we use prayer as the basis, as the core, right? And then we understand that if I mindfully, in a machshava, intent-focused way, lean and express in a certain direction, then I trigger all these forces in my favor. If I do it robotically, I didn't do anything, okay? So mitzvah goreret mitzvah, if it's a mitzvah with intent, if it's a mitzvah that's thoughtful, good? Okay. Then if that...
One very important point I think they also make is the concept of baby steps. Because to get to this mindful, thoughtful kavanah place is a very hard endeavor.
Agreed.
So they say do the mitzvah kala. You could still, don't think that just because you weren't the guy who was totally having, lightning coming out of his head, that you're not that person. sing a song of I love Hashem, or have something even simpler
Right.
that takes you there.
Nice.
And that's as great, because that's taking you on in
In that direction.
direction.
Very nice. Agreed.
You can't get there just by
Right, you
doing
can't
the
just
big
get-
thing,
yeah.
the big.
Yeah, but you know,
Sure.
but yes, that's, I completely agree, but the way you get there faster is by understanding how this mitzvah is supposed to build me, right? The purpose, not the reason, but the purpose of the mitzvah. If I understand, if mitzvot become purposeful to me, then I know why I'm doing it. And now it becomes a different immersive experience.
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying and I agree with what you're saying, but doesn't that go against Naaseh v'nishma?
That's the first step.
Yeah, the first step is absolutely very good, is Naaseh Nishma. But as we touched on, it's Naaseh Nishma, we're gonna do and we're gonna learn, and then it's Naaseh again, and then it's Nishma again, and then it's Naaseh again. So
Right.
we always lead with action. You're absolutely right. We
Yes, yes,
always
yes.
lead with action, but we always immediately follow with scholarship and knowledge. We never do an action and leave it unattended. We always lead with action. In other words, why do we do Naaseh v'nishma? Because the fear is that most people won't act until they know and understand.
What
We don't
they're
wait. We don't
Right.
wait. We
Right.
act, and even if you do it somewhat right and somewhat wrong, do it. Even if we don't fully know and understand, haven't learned the halacha fully, we hold that with Naaseh, but it's immediately followed by Nishma, which is immediately followed by Naaseh, Nishma, and so on, upward and upward and upward, right?
Yeah, but- So you told us that, you're saying that we have to understand the purpose of the mitzvah, but then you also said it's not about the why, it's the how. So
Right.
Is the purpose the why or the how?
No, so okay, good. So the how, we only want to be doing the how. We don't care about the why, right?
So
As
that's
we
the
said.
purpose is the how?
No, so the reason we would, it's a little bit of a thing. We would say the reason for doing something would be the why. The purpose would be, and you know what? I want to say it a little differently. Thank you. We're going to clarify it. I don't want anybody to think about the purpose of the mitzvah. The truth is the wrong term, and it's going to take us in the wrong place. Let's just be immersed in the mitzvah and finish. Just be immersed in it.
Okay. 'Cause you know-
Yeah,
saying,
yeah,
okay.
100% right, 100% right. We'll talk about a purpose thing at some point in the future, but really the truth, purpose is the wrong word. And
Our purpose.
yeah.
Not
Right.
the purpose of the mitzvah. What's our purpose in the
Our-
world?
or really it's what does this mitzvah do for me? But then,
Yeah, okay, the vocabulary.
yeah, so that's why, let's not go, but you're absolutely right. So take it off. Good.
I think the immersive depth and breadth of the mitzvah is where we're
That's right.
looking for. And
That's
it
right.
kind of reminds me of like, I took my kids to a museum that I thought like, wow, great exhibit. And they like walking through and they're like, okay, we're done. I'm like, no, we didn't read anything. Like you saw something, but you don't understand it. Like
Right.
we didn't
Beautiful.
read like when, what time period this happened and how it came to be and all of that. Like you're not getting
Not
deep.
involved,
here.
not
Right,
not
right,
involved.
that's
You
right.
know,
Beautiful.
seeing it, okay, you could say you went to that exhibit and
That's
You
right.
thought
So
about
being,
it,
so going deeply into the mitzvah is what we're talking about. Good. So it's the how, but it's the how blown up. You're right. We got to stay away from the words. We get into,
It's letting the mitzvah go into you,
it's letting the mitzvah go into you.
instead of you
Super.
going in just
Right,
into the
right.
mitzvah. it's
Letting it
them-
come into you. Now, when we do this, when we're leaning in a certain direction, when we're very machshava focused, right? Where do we end up? In what type of place? Where do we end up? What place? What do we call it?
Happy.
Oh, yeah, now they're playing. Now everybody is a wise guy. Well, there's actually another word we're gonna learn in this class.
Well, that sounds a lot Chabad-ish, like in our heads.
Beauty. So what is the term that we use? We use a term for this. When a person has this thing, and by the way, it's a lifetime project, but when a person is immersed and in and machshava focused,
Chasen, right?
Huh?
Chasen.
well, he's gonna have chen, right? That will come of it, great. The person goes into a reality of kedusha. He goes into a different reality of kedusha, which means kedusha is a separate reality. Okay, we've touched on this term before. So kedusha means that the person lives on the same block, hangs out with the same people, this, that, but they're traveling in a different reality. And that reality is a little bubble that they create around themselves. And when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the opportunity of Kedoshim Tihiyu, right? He's giving us the opportunity to get there. He's telling us, immerse in these things, live here, use the tools to have the courage to constantly change and grow and refine and build, and don't be afraid. And then you know what? Is the tail going to be chen? Absolutely. Charisma, magnetism, for sure. But is the reality is going to be different. The life is different. And, you know, we were having a discussion, one of the classes this morning, about the, you know, what's going on in America. There's just a new report just came out. It's literally petrifying in terms of what some of the major schools are doing now to limit their Jewish admissions, and what certain city governments are doing to limit their Jewish participation, and all the things, and very, very clearly documented, really antithetical to what we saw in America for the last better part of 100 years. Okay, so the question becomes, I'm gonna exaggerate the question, and I'm saying it the wrong way. How much do I care? And it goes as follows. On the one hand, I care, right? Because if Harvard went from 25% Jewish at one time down to 6% intentionally, because they don't want that many Jews on the campus, that's something to be concerned about, right? Because their liberalism now precludes Jews. The Jew who designed their liberal agenda now got kicked out of the building. And if the same thing happens in a number of other key schools, and the same thing happens in Hollywood, and the same thing happens in the city of New York, and Schumer's, they quoted Schumer's office, which had 63 people, half of which were Jewish. Chuck Schumer, Jew, right? He now has 94 people, 10 are Jewish. By design, we don't want the Jews here. We don't want them here. Now, on the one hand, based on our Western democratic perspectives, that's very scary. On the other hand, based on how the Geulah takes shape and how I'm building my life and my immersion in Torah and mitzvot, may not be scary at all, because we are a ghetto-focused religion. We are. And people don't like the word ghetto, I got it, but we're enclave-focused. We're insular. We are. And for us, it's about creating our own little bubbles of reality between us and each other, and us and God. And that's the way it works. And what we found over time is the more integrated we were, the more they slaughtered us. And when we were ghettoized, they didn't care about us. Why? Because they don't want us, and we technically don't want them. We want to enrich the world. We want to be enriched by the world, but we want to be living in our little bubbles. So the bubble on a grand scale is what we hope to build together. But the bubble on an individual scale is so easy to achieve. I just get into a zone, and then I'm in a zone, and it's sunnier than it might be for everybody else, and it's brighter, and it's happier, and it's quicker, and there's more laughter, and there's more fun, and there's more closeness to God, and my knowledge curve gets quicker to achieve and to master, and all that stuff happens. That's Kedusha. So if I'm using the method of, I start with Zikaron, I lean on Rachamim a little bit, but I make myself comfortable with the future, past, present, right? I go there. I understand the power of my machshava to transform me. I liberate it from all the junk that's going to confuse it. I go straight up rational and straight up objective. And then I go ahead and I get even gutsier, and I go back and I say, you know what, Ricky, and you know what, God, that was a dumb commitment that I made last week, because I didn't understand life the way I understand it now. Well, I'll make it better. That was a dumb commitment that I made 10 minutes ago. Now, it takes courage to do that. What do? We carry this stuff. We carry it, and we carry it, and we carry it, and we carry it. I did it. This is who I am. This is what I said. This is what I did. That's not Jewish. Something else. So Judaism is this nimbleness, this quickness, this lack of baggage, this courage. And that's what the system is built for. Chacham, speak to me.
I like it.
Okay. God. Great. Okay.
But well, I just feel like there's like a fine line of like taking responsibility for what you did and, you know,
Absolutely. Yes.
right.
So yes, yes. We absolutely are responsible for what we do. This is not meant to preclude that, but it's not, it's meant to limit the responsibility to something reasonable. I'm going to give you another example. Somebody I learned with many years ago, a fantastic person. I learned with him maybe 20 years ago. I told him, you know what? Let's call him Joe. I said, Joe, you have an opportunity to teach. You are so bright. You're so gifted. You're so articulate. He started literally crying, sobbing. What happened? He said, I had this business difficulty 10 years ago. And because of that, I will never put myself in a public place again. What a tragedy. Young man. I said, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? This is America, this Judaism, right? In America, we only invest in people who've stumbled, right? That's the paradigm in American business. You never invest in somebody who hasn't failed, because what do they know? They don't know anything. As in Judaism, alachat kama v'kama. Who's the best guy on the block? The Baal Teshuvah, the person who's working to fix it and make it better all the time. So we need to, Rabbi Kassin says it beautifully, Rabbi Sammy Kassin. He just coined it beautiful. What does he say? Next. Next. He's right. Next. You stumbled, you did something, whatever it was, catastrophic for the minute. That was yesterday. That was 10 minutes ago. Face it, figure it out, make a commitment to get past it. And next is one of the most important words in Judaism, in my opinion. It is. Yeah. Let it go. Frozen.
Because
With the play. Huh?
Because the other option is even worse. If you're not going to move
No, the
on,
option is not Jewish.
move on or don't move on.
The option is not Jewish. It's just a non-Jewish option. Okay, I want to hit one or two other quick things. I gave this a title. I don't love the title, but what is the relatively speaking principle? The relatively speaking. I'm sure the people in this room can come up with a better title. Mark, top of page 5. What does that mean? Relatively speaking. I don't know if you have it, you don't have it.
When you're looking at
Figure it out.
something in context,
Yeah, and what is the context that we create?
like that you shouldn't be looking at something specifically in a vacuum, but other things that surround it should be taken into consideration.
Right, and let's say a person does that to his or her detriment. What would that mean? What would be an example?
That they're looking at things in a vacuum or that they're not.
That they're not, and that becomes something that is to their detriment.
I think when they are looking at something in a vacuum, it could be to their detriment.
Okay, but flip it around the other way for a minute and tell me what you think.
In terms of when they're considering everything else.
Yeah,
but they're not
when could it be?
considering
When could it
themselves.
be a minus for a person when he's
Right.
considering everything else?
That they're unfocused, that
And
there's
what else?
too many outside things coming in and they're not focused on themselves.
And what else?
And they put boundaries.
And what kind of boundaries are they setting?
They're comparing themselves to others.
Beautiful, and therefore what?
They're not skinny enough. They're not rich enough. they're not
And
smart
therefore,
enough.
They're gonna be happy. Or I'm prettier than this other person. It's okay, it's all good.
I'm skinnier. Oh,
You see?
or I'm skinnier. What that's it's good enough.
Right.
It's good enough. That's not Jewish. That's not Jewish.
When you you're saying when you're comparing yourself to someone else and you're like.
I learned an hour a week. Most ladies learned. I'm doing better than them. I don't have to anymore. What are you talking about? Who's looking at life that way? God isn't. Why should you be? Would we look at our children that way? This relativity, and I don't like the title. We'll figure something else out, right? This perspective is also not a Jewish perspective, because I'm vis-a-vis the other one. I am a little bit better in this, a little bit more concerned about that. I'm okay. The Ramchal brings that up in his language, and he says, of course I'm not okay. Of course you're not okay. So this takes a different type of awareness where I'm separating myself from the norm, and I don't, excuse me, I couldn't care less what anybody else is doing. I want what's right for me, what makes me happy. If it makes me, if everybody is on average doing X number of times a week, who cares? Really, who cares?
If you're living in the bubble of Kedusha, you don't really
Beautiful.
deal with this.
You don't care about this. That's right. That's right. If I move myself to, and it became a negatively connotated something, living in a bubble. So that's the best. I should be living in my own little bubble with me and God. Oh, okay. And then other people. When I want them. When I want them. When I want them. It's good she's here. Hear it. Yeah?
Still under the commandment of don't be jealous, right? Really, like.
But it's very, it's
It's the opposite also.
right. It's very
You're better
subtle.
than other people too.
No, not right. True. But it's subtle. It just means, untether yourself altogether. If I have the capacity or the want or the interest to be a superstar teacher, right? Something like that, for example, who cares that I already surpassed everybody in the community, so I don't have to reach 100 miles higher. You can't say that. I'm not talking about you. You would never say that. You would never. Yeah, nobody would ever say that. But that's the point, right? The point is, whatever everybody else is doing, really, who cares? We respect everybody. We love everybody. This, that. But is that going to limit me because I'm looking at myself? Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead, Sarah.
I think I agree, but I think that it's not something you could just definitively say and leave there. I think like when I was conversely speaking about we can't all exist in a vacuum and in our bubble, we have to be considerate of other people. Those are laws in the Torah also. When
For
you're
sure.
part of Klal Yisrael, we're part of Am Yisrael, all of that stuff. And we're
Right.
going back to commitment and this thing that when you were saying about it just leaves us free to change everything. One thing that I pride myself in when I was raising my kids was when you commit to something, you need to follow through. Like if my kids accepted a role in a play and went to 4 practices or 6 practices and then said, you know what, I don't know, I don't want to do it. I was like, you're responsible to other people. The play is functioning. You can't walk away from something. You don't want to do it next semester or the next play, that's okay.
Beautiful.
But you are responsible.
Good.
to other
As
people.
long as who comes first.
But they don't know that yet.
Well,
But
okay, so
learn something
let-
from
good.
studying,
I
and they
agree
might
with you.
love it.
And
So,
I would have said the same thing. But who comes first? Who comes first in your life? Who comes first?
I understand.
No, who comes first?
You want me to say myself? It's hard.
I don't know. I want to kill you to get it out of here.
Because I learned many years with someone about like Ratzon and our will, and she talks about this, and maybe just the language is a little different than you would say, but I feel like maybe it would resonate with you. It's not that we don't do for other people, but it should be, excuse me, it should be our will to do for other people. So when it becomes your child's will that, okay, I want to finish the play and then I won't, it's different than feeling that burden of I have to because of my commitment.
Well, but the
And it
kid, I
becomes like they have to grow to that level. But an
Not
adult,
example, but
I want to go further, Rachel. I want to go further. I apologize, but I want to go further. Who comes first?
we do.
Huh?
You
We
may
do.
not really or
I
go
do.
home.
Huh?
I do.
Okay. That's and by the way, that's not my idea. That's Hakadosh Baruch Hu's idea. That's the rabbis reaffirmed the idea. That's the fact. Now, if we really hold by that we come first, we will give immeasurably to other people because our emotional, spiritual, intellectual accounts are overflowing because of the care we gave to ourselves.
for
But
sure.
if we deplete ourselves,
You have
right?
Nothing to give,
Right.
for sure.
Okay,
I
good.
agree.
So most of us, right, do just that. We're not serving our own needs enough. We're not aware enough of our own needs. And we end up, and by the way, it's only about us. In the end, I have to answer for myself. After 120 years, I have to answer for myself. And I have to stand in front of God and I say, you know what? A guy comes over to me. He works 6 days a week, right? Works 6 days a week. I'm doing it all for my kids. What are you talking about? It's an unadulterated lie. You're not doing it for your kids. Your kids want to be with you, right? Your
Yeah,
kids
I
want to
agree
be
with
with
saying
you.
that.
I'm sorry,
That when he's saying that.
but that's exactly what he means. It's exactly what he means.
On him, like.
It's 100% what he means. It's okay, whatever. It's his way of doing it. Okay, good.
He thinks he means it.
Huh?
He's sounding.
He thinks he means it.
Self-sacrificial to, to sound good to people. by
Okay.
saying that.
Let's get on the page where,
I just
So
think,
let's
but
just
when he's
say-
saying when we're full and we want to do things, it becomes our will to
yeah,
do things.
and it doesn't mean it's
That's
all
what
of
I'm
one
saying.
and none of the other, but as long as the one that's primary is me.
Why can't we say this comparatively speaking thing? That if it impedes you from growing individually and taking care of yourself and your needs and so on and so forth, X. If it, if it makes you feel better than another person, so you stop improving yourself and you're okay with what you have, X. But what happens if it's, I don't know, I just feel like reality is you live in a world, like this could be something that works towards your advantage of growth. This could be something that works towards your advantage of helping someone else grow. So I don't see this in like
As
in
long
its
as I
own.
come first. As long-
Yeah, I just think that you could
And as
look at
long
this
as I'm
4 different
comfortable
ways,
with the
not
fact that
one.
I come first. That's all. Get comfortable with the fact that you come first. I don't put my spouse first. I don't put my kids first. I don't put anybody first. I put me first. And if I put me first and I build my needs and my wants and my opportunities, then I'm going to be the best spouse and the better parent. And obviously, this is all obvious.
I have a question. When I pray for my husband and my children. I very rarely pray for myself.
Well,
In
she's
other words, I never say me. Is that wrong?
100%.
So where do I fit in this scope?
At the top of the page.
That's right. You fit in throughout the page. We're going to do tefillah on a very rigorous level. God willing is part of this. We did it many years ago. We're going to do it on a very different level, really splitting hairs and stuff like that, God willing. And you'll see it. You'll start to see it differently. But in the meantime, put yourself in.
I
Close to
submit to
yourself.
myself.
Yeah. What else? Thoughts?
The prayer is designed, Modeh Ani,
No?
Elohai Neshama Tatabi.
Yeah.
If you put
Focus
the-
is on myself.
if you put the perspective, the lens focusing inward, then from there, then you can go outwards. The old relativity thing. Look to yourself, what you're capable of, how much godliness you have, how much potential he gave you, whatever, and then you want to go out there.
Yeah.
See if and how you measure up. Go for it.
There's no one more kinder
set
than
the
the
bar.
selfish person. There's no one more kind than the selfish person. No one. Selfish in Judaism is a very good word. Huh?
They're more real, if
Yeah.
they're doing something for you, so to
Yeah.
speak, that they
Yeah.
really wanna.
The selfless Christian business is unadulterated garbage. It's completely anti-Jewish. And in Judaism, selfishness is absolutely the top priority. And selfishness does not mean I hurt anybody else.
I feel like there's probably a better Hebrew word for it
Yeah.
in the English. I don't really like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
What is
I don't think it
That's me, not
translates.
you.
I think there's a better.
We
word
say it
for
in Hebrew, Chayecha Kodmim. That's what we say, that my life comes first. That's what we say. Listen, we've been, how are you? We've been trained on this thing, but
No, I just think it's a.
because we don't like the word. How are you, Sharon? We don't like the word. But okay. Okay. Let's do some Purim today. Let's do a little Purim.
Taking out the promotion.
Wait, we're closing this?
But yeah, yeah, you can close this. We're gonna do a little Purim and then we'll go to Bereshit. Okay. So what, let's review a couple quick concepts. What is the concept of moed? Concept of moed? Moed. What is the term moed? Important term to own. What does it mean? A moed, it means holiday. A moed is a moment in time that shapes the person, right? That's a moed. So today is a moed. Anita said is a moed. Tomorrow is a moed, right? Every moed has a job in shaping the person, right? Now, if the Torah was written before the world was created, right? What came first, the moadim or the events that we ascribe to them? Yeah.
In the Moadim.
Right.
Yeah.
So so God had the plan on how he wanted to build the Jewish people and the world in this human growth dream and opportunity, right? So we hold that he wrote the Torah before the world was created, which is a challenging thing to say. And I haven't seen anybody who really can articulate what that means fully, but we hold by it. But one of the things we do take from it is that the holidays were established before the events that are tagged to those holidays. Meaning, Pesach was going to be Pesach. Hi, Valerie. Pesach was going to be Pesach.
What did you say Moed was?
It means holiday. It
No, you
means
said a moment in time.
an oasis in time. It technically means an oasis in time. Right.
Like, you know, what is the gold notebook? I don't know.
It's definitely the coolest notebook on the table. So let's go with this perspective. Yeah. So if HaKadosh Baruch Hu writes the Torah before the world is created, it means Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, that all existed in his mind. These were Moadim, holidays that he wanted us to experience in order for us to grow, and therefore machinated the events that would end up bringing to those holidays, right? Good, right? Everybody's good on this, right? So we don't have Pesach because we got out of Egypt. We went to Egypt and we got out of Egypt so we could have Pesach. Okay, good. This brings with it a very important imperative, which is that I have to know what to take out of the holiday. And therefore, the structure of the holiday started with people learning the halachot of the holiday on the holiday, the how, on the holiday itself. Moshe Rabbeinu declares that the people should learn the halachot of Pesach 30 days before, because they're much more cumbersome and difficult. And what evolves from that is we learn the halachot of every holiday 30 days before. And from the halacha, right? From the halacha, which is how, we figure out how we're going to grow from it, what the takeaways are going to be. Okay. Now, so we have several holidays that HaKadosh Baruch Hu designed and wrote into the Torah Shebichtav, right? He wrote into the written law. Then we have this very curious thing that happens. We have this delineation of Acharit Hayamim, of the time, the later time of Mashiach, when Mashiach would have come and gone, when the Jewish people will reclaim their kingdom with Jerusalem as the capital. The Beit HaMikdash will be rebuilt or will be brought down from the heavens. We'll be back in that place. And the world will be different in one primary respect, and that is that man overall will be more spiritual than he is now. We say it's 51% physical, 49% spiritual. That'll go back to 50-50, according to most opinions. That 50-50 enables an understanding of life and the relationship with God eons beyond what we have now. And that's what we find for. 1%.
That sounds.
Yeah.
Why not?
Maybe it's 51-49 the other one. But that's all it needs. That's all we need. I'm voting for that one. Beauty. That's all we need. So an extension of that is that at that time of Acharit Hayamim, all the other 18 of the 19 books of the Tanakh will no longer be read. One opinion is that they're put in Geniza and never looked at again. All the Nevi'im, the Ketuvim, other than Megillat Esther, will all be put in Geniza, according to Harambam. What? Shtak. What do you mean? We live and die with the words of these people. But it would have all been realized by then. So we don't need it, right? What Yirmiyah talks about and the lessons from the book of Shemuel and the lessons from the book of Yeshaya, we won't need them anymore. What will remain? The 5 books of the Chumashim, right? 5 books of Moshe, Torah, and Megillat Esther. The Al-Sheikh HaKadosh says it in a fascinating way. He says that the Jewish people would have grown to such an intellectual level and their intellectual access will become so high that everything that the Nevi'im talked about, they'll be able to see in the Chumash itself. So we won't be reading the Nevi'im or Ketuvim anymore. We won't be reading the Megillat Ruth. We won't be doing Eov. Because whatever insights we need from them, we can take from the 5 books. So it's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous idea, right? We would have reached that level of intellectual awareness and capacity where we can go into the Chumash without needing the Navi.
Can we talk about why we need,
Why do we need the Navi now?
no, why will we need the Chumash?
Because the Chumash is forever. The Chumash will forever define our relationship to ourselves and to God. And
Won't we have that defined for ourselves in Olam Haba?
no, it's not Olam Haba.
Oh.
I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. It's Acharit Hayamim. Acharit Hayamim. So let's talk about it. What Acharit Hayamim is this paradise life like life on earth. Mashiach comes, Mashiach goes. We have Tchiyat Metim, where all the righteous people come back. And then we have this blissful, spiritually driven physical reality based on the new calibration and the new access that HaKadosh Baruch Hu offers, and a lifespan that's either forever or 500 years, depending on the opinion. The opinion say 500 years say that's what you really need to get it right. What do you think? I don't know. Yeah, 500 years. 500 years, you get it all the way you need to get it. Okay. So here we are. HaKadosh Baruch Hu designs the human experience, ideally, before he creates the world, right? Based on that, he puts in all these holidays, Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, this, that, to ultimately bring us to this idyllic spiritual place and intellectual place, right? Which is the latter part of Acharit Hayamim. Olam Haba is something else. We'll talk about it, but latter part of Acharit Hayamim, which is the end of days in English, the end of days, right? And at that point, there's going to be much less for us to study because we need much less in order to maintain and build further on this heightened connectedness to God and ourselves, right? We only need the 5 books and the story of Esther, right? And our rabbis say that all the other holidays that HaKadosh Baruch Hu designed from before the world was created are folded, closed, no longer celebrated, and the only one we celebrate is Purim.
So I was going to ask which holidays were included in the Moed.
All the biblical holidays. All the biblical holidays. Pesach, Shavuot, Rosh Hashanah, Kippur, Sukkot. Of course the rabbinic holidays are going away. Of course the fast days are going away. Of course the days of mourning, no, they're not going away. Of course. Of course that's going. Yeah? Now, Purim is the champion. Purim, the rabbinic holiday, is the only one left standing.
Where's Hanukkah fall out?
Hanukkah, depending on the opinion, but probably out. Probably out. Yeah? We're in a different state. We're in a lot less cooking. A lot less cooking. The thing is a lot less cooking. God cared about the ladies. So we're in a different state. Okay, so we're in a much higher spiritual state, much higher intellectual state. We can achieve much more with less. And everything is endowed into the holiday. And go back to the first point we made, that a moed is a point in time where I need to extract as much as possible. So let's assume we're in Acharit Hayamim, God willing. Everybody will all be back together, learning and enjoying and celebrating our 400th year of life or something like that. And the only holiday we have is Purim, let's say. But we miss Passover and we miss Kippur and we miss all these days, right? But HaKadosh Baruch Hu and our rabbis established that we can get it all out of Purim. You can get whatever you got out of Passover, Sukkot, is that anything can be gotten out of Purim. So how does that work?
I think it's great. They already say Purim is Kippurim, so that's an easy one.
Okay, but tell us why. Tell us why, step by step. Let's start with the beginning. Pesach.
Pesach, we were redeemed from the Persia.
Where Passover, we were redeemed from slavery, and here
and here we were redeemed
from extermination, God forbid.
And one was a physical redemption. And one was
Right, but this was an absolute redemption, because Purim, it was an absolute, unequivocal, complete extermination. So the redemption from Purim was a much greater redemption. So we don't need Passover anymore, right? Great. What about Sukkot?
I don't know, maybe they allowed us to go to their Tabernacle again.
Well, okay.
I don't have a direct correlation.
On Sukkot, what do you say? What is Sukkot? What's the underlying theme of Sukkot? Yeah, the Ananei Kavod, great. That we can depend on God. It's more temporal, it's less permanent. Okay, we learned that with Purim as well. We can depend on God. We don't need permanence and structure and this, that. Okay. What about, we skipped Kippur.
The trees and agriculture.
Yeah, trees.
Trees,
Right.
it served our purpose instead of,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe if you wanted to takes time, but you could make a clearer parallel.
Okay, I'm open for that. What about Rosh Hashanah?
Say Purim again?
I'm sorry?
I mean, you say Sukkot again?
Yeah, sorry.
Sukkot,
So
maybe
Sukkot,
Sukkot.
one of the elements of Sukkot is the cloud cover that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us, meaning that we understand that permanence and what we think is protection is really minimal and not so really valuable, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu covered us with clouds, and his coverage is what really earns me the protection that I need.
So what do we get from Purim? Right.
Oh, so God covered us here. In other words, we had God's coverage.
And he was invisible. I mean,
Yeah.
He wasn't even present.
Yeah, we had his
Story,
coverage.
but yet he-
The good stuff came. Good. What about Rosh Hashanah?
That's easy.
It's an easy one,
The
right?
king opens his books and he reads. it.
Yom Adin, right? It's the day of judgment. What's a bigger day of judgment than Purim? There wasn't one. Great. What about Kippur? What do you say?
We did all that. We prayed, we fasted, we.
Beauty. We prayed, we fasted, did that. It was in Purim as well. What did we skip? Did we skip anything?
Pesach.
Hanukkah,
Oh, no,
Hanukkah.
Shavuot, beauty. What about Shavuot?
Oh, that was
They read.
We accept that.
Prayer.
Easy one. Right. We accepted the Torah on a much higher level than we accepted the first time. Okay. So let's run a few models here. Ready? We start the system with Matan Torah, right? We start the original system with Matan Torah. Somebody said Na'aseh Nishma, right? Sarah said it, Na'aseh Nishma, right? Where we say that first time around, it was a very cold acceptance, a very forced acceptance. HaKadosh Baruch Hu forces us to accept the Torah. It's cold and it doesn't work so well. All the Jewish people do is fail in the desert, right? For years. What God does to warm it up is he gives us the Mishkan. He lets us build it, each of us be involved in it, take a piece of it, create this home that we're going to share with him. And then he sanctions himself in it, and we all become part of each other. So what starts as a very cold mechanical setup becomes warm with the Mishkan. We bring korbanot, we sing, it's beautiful. We enjoy that for 800 years, right? We have 400 years of the Mishkan, 400 years of the first temple, and then we're thrown out. When we're thrown out, millions of people are hundreds of thousands of people are killed and enslaved and all the terrible things. Jerusalem is completely destroyed. But we're given a prophecy that it's going to end in 70 years, right? Now, this is the first galut, right? So we have a total new experience here with God, which we never saw before, right? So what happens, and here's the model for galut, and it's very important to understand it, and then we'll hit the second point. So what happens in the galut is we have the concept of hastarat panim. What does that mean, Biv?
Hidden face.
Right, Hakadosh Baruch Hu is going to become more obscure, less visible to us. We're going to see him less, right? We're talking about in the first class how to see him more, but generally speaking, he's not going to be fire and brimstone on the top of a mountain. He's not going to be trumpets blowing and all that kind of stuff. So in the galut, which this was the first galut, this was the first diaspora when we went to Babylon, right?
After the Torah.
After the Torah. You're
Yeah.
saying, but like.
Yeah, we had 800 years in Israel,
Right.
and nobody ever thought that was going to change. This was the reality that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted, right? Everything Na'alenu was destroyed, was thrown out of the country, and we have this hastarat panim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu becoming more obscure, harder to see. You don't have any of the overt stuff. And then what happens? The galut, the model for the galut is HaKadosh Baruch Hu is less visible, and the Jewish people thrive. That's the model. The model is that God is less visible, and the Jews become very rich and very powerful. So what does that create? It creates absolute distance, right? Because we don't have the Beit HaMikdash or any of its obligations. We don't have the Sanhedrin or any of their proclamations. We're out in the Galut. We don't see God so much because on top of the physical and structural and organizational things that were destroyed, God steps away from us intentionally. And then what does he do to stir the soup and make it that much harder? He makes us very successful. Like Leanne Harl, like we are here in the United States. This is the Jewish people of today, the wealth of the Jewish community around the world is so beyond anything that was ever imagined by the most ambitious person, right? That's what it is. Okay, it's a good thing, right? Okay. So now you have this model. Okay. Coupled with that is you have 67 years or so of the diaspora, right? Our prophet said we'd be back home in 70. 67 years, nothing's happening. Probably 70th year, nothing's happening. What do we say over here? Ezra and Nehemiah go back with 40,000 people, plus minus nothing. It's a joke. The poor people, some of the religious people, that's it. They go back. Everybody else stays over here. Yeah. So what's going on in people's minds?
People's minds, they forgot God.
It's over. The game is over. It's a new game. The game's over. We didn't. The 70-year prophecy didn't come true. And by the way, things are great here. Things are really great. And by the way, everybody's keeping Shabbat. We don't have an issue in terms of the story of Purim that people were sinning. They weren't sinning.
Were they assimilating?
They weren't assimilating. So
They just gave up on the redemption.
they gave up on the redemption, but what did they do? What did they do to merit, God forbid, an absolute extinction? Now, some people say they brought the kelim of the Beit HaMikdash to, could be, maybe they did. So what? In Judaism, the punishment has to fit the crime. Punishment has to fit the crime. So even if they brought the kedim of the Bet HaMikdash, even if Ahashverosh was wearing Aharon's clothing, even if they drank unkosher wine, even if they ate unkosher food, even if they partied for 180 days plus, what does that have to do with an absolute death sentence? Yeah.
It wasn't, they forgot God, so God decided.
Okay, so what does it mean, Sarah? Beautiful. What does it mean they forgot God? You're on
So
it.
they weren't doing the death, they were just doing, you said they weren't committing
Beautiful.
sins, they were doing the stuff, but they were doing, they weren't really immersed in it, they weren't really living life with God as their partner,
Very
so.
good. Very good. So
That for the Yesharim, chapter 5, he says it.
yeah,
That's one of them.
that if it's robotic,
He said if it's too into the physical world.
yeah, but
That's what he said,
right,
that's
yes,
one
he
of the
does,
ways
absolutely
they're
does say
doing the
that.
world too much.
Absolutely does say that. But over here, I want to just nuance it a little bit more than that. If it's robotic, then it goes back to the phrase we see at the end of Bishalach, Hayesh Hashem b'kidbenu im ayin, is God within us or not? And this is Amalek 2.0. That's exactly what happened. So in the first time around, you have Kiryat Yamsuf, you have the Man, you have the Mei Merivah, you have the greatest miracles and the greatest treachery that Bnei Israel turn against God with. And then it's summarized, Hayesh Hashem b'kidbenu im ayin, is God within us or not? And because God was not within them, to your point, Amalek, who doesn't exist, there's no such thing as Amalek. There's no such thing. We know that the people who took on the sword against the Jewish people are the grandchildren of Esav, right? But in fact, Amalek is not Nazi Germany or Spain or Babylon. Amalek could be anybody. Amalek gets his charge when the people are not immersed with Akadosh Baruch Hu, when it's not in us. So if it's not in us, if it's robotic, if it's mechanical, then you have this thing where God says, "What are we doing here?"
I also read something this week about the unity of the nation of the Jews. When we're disunited, when we're separate, then there's room for Amalek too. The crack is there.
It's all true. It was definitely not perfect, but I want you to drill down to why this happened. You know, the Targum writes on the Megillah that Haman, Achashverosh brings in, right? The decree was on the 13th of Adar. They take 2 or 3 weeks. They bring in scribes from every one of the 127 city-states so that each proclamation could be written exactly in the lingo and language and terminology of that specific place. So there was no confusion. And then the Targum writes what Achashverosh dictated to these men. And he says, listen, this guy Haman came to me. He's a very rich guy, powerful guy, has a lot of assets. And he told me about these people. He didn't have to tell me much, Achashverosh writes. He told me very little. But based on what he told me, I want to get rid of them. And by the way, I want anybody who has a spear, pick up your spear. Anybody who has a sword, pick up your sword and slaughter them, men, women, and children with no mercy. Don't think about it. Take everything they have. And he says, and then have a party like I am. He said, I'm partying now. He writes, Ani ochel v'shoteh, according to the Targum. I'm partying, and I intend on continuing to party while you slaughter these people. So please go ahead and do so. So this thing to choose the date is done in the middle of Adar. The date's chosen for the Adar of the following year. Very good. Now we say it took a couple of weeks for him to write these proclamations and send them out because everyone was done Kedatu Kedin as per his thing. And then Mordechai goes to Esther. She pushes back. By the way, why does she push back? Let's take a little breather for a minute. Why does she push back? Halachically, why did she push back? She was married to him, right? So why does she was married to Mordechai? She was taken by a Hashverosh. She doesn't want to go before a Hashverosh and make it. Why not? We have an interesting thing in the halacha where we say anus v'hamana patzveh. If someone is forced to do something, then Hakadosh Baruch Hu forgives them. So we hold that the 5 years that Esther spent in the palace of Ahashverosh, whenever she was with him, she was anusa. It was forced, and therefore she was able to go back to her husband when she wanted. At this point, being that she was going to Ahashverosh willfully, she's not considered anusa anymore. It's not against her will, and therefore she'll never be with her husband again. And she knew that. She said, I'm going to ruin my life. Can't you find somebody else to do this job? So I'm going to ruin my life, and I may not be successful. Okay. Then what does she do? She declares 3 days of fast. We know when, right? We talked about this before. The first 3 days of Passover. Good. Where does she get the idea from? Where does she get the idea for the 3 days of fast? Beauty. She gets the idea from Ninveh. Great. Right. What happened in Ninveh? Yonah goes to Ninveh, right? Yonah goes to Ninveh, tells 120, a city of 120,000 men, very large city. God is going to destroy them. The king, who's the king? Vivian of Ninveh. Who's the king of Ninveh? Come on.
My gosh.
Ninveh. Who? Paro is the king of Ninveh. Paro. It could
Which
be
part of?
Paro. It could be our Paro or a Paro from his lineage. What does Paro do the minute Yonah gets there? He tears his clothing. He
Right.
puts that on sackcloth. He puts dirt on his head. He sits on the floor and he proclaims a 3-day fast. Now, 3 days means that nothing, day and night, no food or drink, 3 days straight. Now, what happens at the end of the 3-day period? HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgives them. Esther takes a page from that book. She says we have a catastrophic threat. Done. She declares a 3-day fast for everybody. She leads the charge. No eating, no drinking, right? By the time she gets to Ahashverosh and Haman, our rabbis say that there was nothing physical left to her, because anything physical she had broken. Because at the end of 3 days of absolutely no food or drink, the person is no longer functioning based on a physical energy. They're focusing purely based on non-physical. Yeah.
Wasn't part of the reason she also fasted was so that by the end of the 3 days, she hoped to not be desirable to him?
No, she needed to be desirable to him. She needed to be. But she needed to break, she and everybody else needed to break the decree. And the only way they could break the decree, they reasoned that what's the model here? They don't have a model. What are they going to do? Right? They don't know what to do. So she doesn't know how to break this decree because it was never decreed on us before. So she says, if we can separate all of us with her at the lead from anything physical and just connect to God on a purely spiritual level, maybe we have a shot. So that's what she decides to do. Right?
I thought God in Noah said he wasn't going to destroy the world again.
It wasn't.
This
It
isn't
wasn't, but
destroying the world?
this wasn't the world. This was the Jewish people. This was the Jewish people, right? Everybody else would have been around. Okay. So here's the model. So the model is Hastarat Panim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes a step back. The Jewish people do very well. We become robotic and mechanical, which we've pretty much become, right? No, I know this should never happen, but pretty much where we are today, we're robotic and mechanical. We do stuff. We keep mitzvot. We're not flourishing. We're not growing. We're not building. We're not enthusiastic. We do stuff. We do it happily, but we're not. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says after a while, what are we doing here? There's nothing here. What are we doing? I didn't start this thing for a bunch of robots. I need a different level of immersion, a different level of enthusiasm, a different level of excitement. I don't need you to do mitzvot. I need you to be with me. It's like having a friend and being in love with someone. What's the difference? It's all the difference in the world. God says, I want you to be in love with me. That's what I want. I want to be top of mind all the time. Is that where we are? God tells them, no, so I'll see you. So that's the model we have for Purim. Therefore, the Purim model, the Purim message is the most important of all, more important than all the other messages. And we end up focusing on this overwhelmingly. Now, okay, so far? All right, okay, good. So let's touch on one other element of
So
it.
then he changed his mind just because people fasted.
No, he changes God changes his mind. Yeah, that's right. Because the people remove themselves from the physical completely for a limited period of time, and from that came this sense of renewal and change, and things were going to be different going forward. Now, I don't know, were they really different? Unfortunately, we experienced the Spanish Inquisition, right? 4 million people, Jews killed. We experienced the Holocaust, 6 million Jews killed. I don't know. What does this all mean? Are we understanding it right? I don't know. But can we understand the Inquisition? Probably not. It's too recent. Can we understand the Shoah? Definitely not. It's too recent. But can we understand this? Maybe. And when you have to go with the halachic rules, there isn't a punishment without a crime, and the punishment must fit the crime. So we could have done a lot of things wrong at that time, but what we did wrong to bring us to a point of total extermination, no, how could that be? How could it be? You know how it is? It's not because the people were eating unkosher or this or that or that. It's much more than that. It's because people weren't plugged in. So what do we do on Purim?
So then that punishment doesn't fit. I mean,
It does.
It does fit?
Yeah.
So if you're not plugged in,
Then that's not plugged into you.
Yeah, that's right. If it's not a warm relationship, it's not a relationship. That's what God says. Yeah, if you want to say something. Give me a warm relationship or don't give me anything. That's what.
it's a kind of a
It's like as a
punishment.
people, we flip flop a lot. Like we become so broken that we turn to God when we're broken, and then the man comes, all the
That's-
things that, and then okay, we're comfortable.
That's
and
right.
then
That's the comfortable
just-
thing is the thing we have to.
But that's like so. So then, do I do that with my kids too? I mean,
Do what?
Like, if it's not the warmest relationship, I don't want it at all. It's like so.
You know what? You're
I
gonna
thought
you're gonna
it's
you
growth on a journey.
we
to
are.
do better.
Good.
It's like
good. So I'm going to fill in some of the stuff we talked about before you came. There's methods to reclaim. There's methods to build, to grow, to step back in. We talked about a number of those things in the earlier class, and those happen individually and collectively, but those need to be happening. And if for a certain period of time they're not happening, then we have a crisis.
So if we're not on the journey, that's.
If you're not on the journey,
If you're
right.
on the journey,
If
it's
it's not
okay.
warm, it's got to be warm. Huh? If
If
you're
on-
apathetic. Right.
If you're on a warm journey. is
If
that
you're on a
okay?
warm journey.
So warm-
If it's on a warm journey, it's got to be a journey. Perfect, Sharon. Got to be a
Warm.
journey, and it's got to be warm. What's the difference between warm and cold? Huh?
Present.
Yeah, presence, mental presence, emotional presence, the willingness to sacrifice, the willingness to change. That's what we're talking about.
Okay, a warm journey.
A warm journey. I think that's good. Yeah. What do you say?
I just, now that you were saying that, it's nice not nice, but what Haman was telling Ahasuerus about the Jewish people and the way they were relating to the Persian Empire, maybe was meant for us to read about how the Jewish people were relating to our own God,
There you go.
where he was saying, they are different people and we're intended to be an Am Sibula and a special people, if you want to read it that way. And then he says specifically, so their ways and their customs, datem shonim mikol am, their customs are different, but et dateh hamelech enam osim. So they
Beautiful.
might be keeping the laws, but they're not keeping them in the way that God had intended, or the king had. And then it says the most important, velamelech en shoveh lehanicham. And
Incredible.
therefore the king, which is really God, shouldn't care if
Fantastic.
they're
Fantastic.
So
Grand
really,
slam.
really, Haman's words are our
That our admonition, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome.
for future
Beautiful.
generations to understand that you could have a different language, you could dress differently, you could do all that, but if you don't have that
If you don't have this,
relationship with your king,
yeah.
if the datehem is not, it says.
Read it one more
it-
time, the two references, because Melech references Akadosh Baruch Hu in the
So,
Megillah. Fantastic.
Yeshno Am Echad, there is a nation, so we should be reading this, not that we're different and oddball, so we should be exterminated, but we're mefuzad umefudad ben hamim. God separated us and what treasured us from all the nations. Again, it's whether we're reading it or Haman is saying it, but it's recorded here for us to read. He's not reading this, so that's why I think it's so nice. And it says,
Well, the Finaster wrote it, so he never saw it.
yes,
Great.
exactly. So the
Great.
guy are writing what Haman is saying, not so we should know what Haman said, but so that we should know what brings about
Fabulous. Fabulous.
annihilation. It says Dateim shonot mikol am. They have different laws or customs. Ve'et dateh hamelech enam osim. And they're not following, we're following our own rules and not following God's rules. Velamelech en shoveh lehanicham. Therefore, if we follow our own rules and not his rules, God's rules, then we're not worthy of being spared.
So what do we,
So, Ricky, if I wanted to take away something from Purim, because it's such an important holiday or time area, time period, what should I take away from Purim right now?
okay, so I'm going to give it to you in general, and then I'm going to give it to you specifically, and then we're going to wrap up. Great. Generally speaking, it's exactly what Vivian described, right? And I love the term that we came up with, warm journey. It's a warm journey. Journey is vulnerability, risk, quantifiable growth, right? The Ramchal said, I check every day, see how I'm growing. So it's vulnerability, risk, quantifiable growth. It's an emotional immersion and commitment to God and what he's looking for. It's not robotic. It's constant. It's friction and growth. It's movement. It's not mechanical. It's not passive. It's very different. Think of a person, Havdil, who plays tennis once a week, and the tennis fanatic, right? The tennis fanatic is a person that they live it, sleep it, breathe it, eat it, drink it, right? That's the tennis fanatic, right? That's what we're talking about here. We want to be, I don't like the term fanatic, but we want to be that way in our Judaism. The same way there's a guy who plays tennis once or twice a week, and then there's a person who loves tennis and preaches its beauty and thinks it's the greatest thing. And that's what we want to be. And that's a very different person.
I don't agree.
Huh? Okay. Okay.
But then a person that plays tennis, that's all they care about. That's not good either. You're not getting. I think
Just-
it's a bad example.
Okay, good. Okay, bad example. No problem. I accept it. I accept that. I accept that it's a bad example.
Example. I'm saying you're not going to example because you want to be guys should be around you all the time and be connected, but to be only with that's not good either. Then you're missing out on other things.
But
That connects you to God.
But we hold that if I'm God focused overall, I shouldn't be missing out on anything.
There you go.
Everything should fall into that.
You know what? I think Theodore Roosevelt said it in his poem, Daring Greatly. You need to be in the ring. not on the outside watching it. If you read the poem, Theodore Roosevelt, it's fantastic. You need to be in the ring and getting your hands dirty and really living it rather than being outside and just observing.
Great.
So,
That's
you
what.
know, yeah.
Okay, let's quickly go over the halachot that speak to this. Okay, the the main halacha is we know, right? If you can do it in a larger group rather than a small group, we do it in a larger group, right? Okay, very good. The mishloach manot, right? What the idea of the mishloach manot was, it started as a backhanded way to give people what to eat on their Seudat Purim who didn't have enough food and weren't categorized as poor, where they could get the matanot le'evyonim and were embarrassed to ask. So that's what the purpose of the mishloach manot. 2 items could be the same beracha, of course, obviously could be the same beracha, doesn't have to be different berachot, but 2, nice if it's different, beautiful, but it doesn't have to be. But the idea of the mishloach manot was to build people, was to give people a lifeline that don't have the food, enough food to put in their seudah, right? So that's why it has to come. The mishloach manot has to come before the seudah, right? It has to come before the seudah. So ideally, people want to put it on the seudah because that's what it's meant to be done. It has to be edible. It can't be dvar Torah, something like that. At least 2 components of it need to be edible, right? Good. What about the So the mishloach manot and
I
okay,
always thought it was 2 berachot. I don't know.
It's
why I
not.
thought that.
it's not.
Not just
It's
2
not.
items.
2 items.
If I give, does my husband have to give?
Yes. What if you give to a husband and wife? It's considered 1 or 2. It's considered 2. Okay. If you give, you have 1. You have to give, and he has 1. He has to give. Everybody has to give 1.
Didn't you once teach us that mishloach manot was for the giver?
Absolutely for the giver. It's for the benefit of the giver.
Right,
That's
so that's not, if it's really for the person to have food, it's not really for the giver.
Oh no! In terms of the sensitivity, it's for the giver. Yes. But the other person is absolutely benefiting from it. Yes. So it's really, you're right. So it's both. Matanot le'evyonim, is that part of maaser? Yes or no? Is it part of the 10% that we typically give, or we try to give more than 10? The answer is no. It's above that. But when we're giving matanot le'evyonim, what do we have to have? We have to. We're told that even if you get tricked, you fulfilled the mitzvah. Let's say you gave to 3 Chinamen who look Jewish. Don't discern, don't distinguish, don't. On this one, we don't. And I told the story to the men yesterday. I'll tell it again very quickly. A couple of years ago, it was pouring rain on Purim. There was a family standing outside of Sharet Zion in the pouring rain. Mother, daughter, this, that. The kids were crying. Just crying, and they were freezing and they were drenched and things. So people came back and said that was a fake, that was a phony, that was thing. You know what? Get faked, get faked. It doesn't matter. Okay, it doesn't matter. Okay, and we have, when you're giving the matana to the evyon, the way to fulfill the mitzvah, you must be empathetic. When giving charity or maaser, you should be empathetic. When giving a matanot to an evyon, because the evyon, then it was a person who's falling, is in pain. He's not the ani, it's different. It's a person who needs us. The person needs the human connection. So it's only about giving to 2 people. You could give to 100, but when you give to the 2 people, meet them eye to eye, smile. And if they took us for the $1 or the $20 or whatever the number is, that's all good. It's fine.
2 evyonim per person. Is
2
it
evyonim.
also that if someone asks you on that day, you can't say no?
You shouldn't say no, correct. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
always money, it has to be money.
It should be, yeah. It could be food also, because the idea is that they're putting it
But then it's mishloach manot.
on the table. Yeah, so money is good, but it can't be, okay. The Seudah itself, right? The Seudah should be meat. It should be on with hamotzi. Should be with hamotzi, right? Okay. And it should be a great time. It should be an absolute great time. It should be fun, should be set up to be fun. And drinking wine is absolutely a part of it. It's a mitzvah to drink wine. Why is it a mitzvah to drink wine? We have hooks to the wine, right? The problem started with wine, the problem ended with wine. It's true, but wine does something else. Again, if we're saying everything is baked into Purim, then what does wine do?
Does it enlighten you?
Yeah, it does. It enlightens a person. It opens up a person's mind and heart and soul, we believe, and it enables new perspectives. So we want that. And the couch of all of this, of the holiday that will take all holidays, is, sorry to say it, have a great time. It's the happiest of all our holidays. Like Vivian said, Yom Kippur is like Purim. If I could reach a high level of awareness and sensitivity with God, having a good time, who needs any of the other stuff? God never needed it and never wanted it. So Purim is the holiday. It's the happiest holiday. Everything about it is happy. Everything about it is a celebration. And it really puts all the pieces together. Anything else? I think we're good.
Rabbi, is a society that doesn't follow Torah, like the letter of the law, but follows the spirit of the law, a Jewish society? Like you have that, a lot of Reform liberal Jews who are very, charitable, caring. Is it better? Worse? How do they warrant extermination?
Probably.
Really?
No,
Seriously?
God forbid.
No way, really?
So we know that from Egypt, right?
Okay,
They said at maximum 20% left.
right,
Maximum.
okay.
Some people say as little as 5% left.
Oh, 80% perished, okay. So
80%
that's-
either assimilated or whatever. It's happening all over again.
So they do warrant, I mean, even if they're like good, really good people, like good charitable,
They
caring,
certainly, and they certainly earn something.
they're not observing
but,
Shabbat or whatever.
The Jewish person has different responsibilities.
So they
We have
warrant
different
extermination, And
responsibilities.
they were exterminated in
Oh,
Egypt.
Warrant is a big word. They
Warrant
may
is a
be
big word.
self-exterminating. They may be doing themselves in,
Yeah.
by not keeping
They're
their.
happy.
And as we spoke about, Sharon, we have a responsibility to that. I hold that we have a big responsibility. The fact that we're letting this happen on our watch is unacceptable. And we're all responsible for these people. And the fact that they live down the block and around the corner and in the next borough, and we've done nothing to stop this thing, it's happened in our lifetimes. I think that's a real issue that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to call us to task on. So we have work to do in that. Yeah.
Can we go back to this, Purim? Are they all equally weighted, the mitzvot?
Yes. The most important is the Megillah. No. And
So for instance, like my
the
daughter.
Seudah is probably the most important.
Okay.
Huh?
For instance, my daughter's working, we checked with the rabbi, who said it's not enough for her to read the Megillah unless she's reading it from a scroll. She has to have it read.
If she's
to
reading
her,
it, she could read it from a scroll. If she's hearing
or
it, she
she's
could
gonna
hear it
have
from what.
read to her.
Yeah.
So that was one. Then, okay, I sent her Mishloach Manot to give to someone.
Great.
And then, okay, fine, Matana Levini, Seudah, I don't know, she's working, she's in the hospital, she's.
Right. So let her, could she hook up with one other person?
It'll be like after Sunday, I'm like, it's not even gonna be a thing.
Okay. Okay. If she's anus, so if she's anus, if she can't do it, because she's saving people's lives or
Right.
potentially saving people's lives.
And then one's out, like.
What?
One is out.
Okay, so that's it. Next.
Like,
No,
is wine
she,
even as important as the others?
no, wine is part of the Seudah, should be part of the Seudah.
And
By the way, women are fully have full obligation and opportunity like the men doing this, equal terms across the board.
I love how you explain Mishloach Manot, because I think it's also a good paradigm for how we should treat things when we're creating social services.
Nice. Okay.
Like not just the destitute, but maybe there's someone that's kind of like in the middle and we
Yeah.
need to be.
That's
focused
exactly what
on
I'm
how
talking
to-
And really, before you go into plan a holiday, plan it. Plan how it's going to be a different level of celebration for your family than you ever had before. And plan that. These things don't happen by chance. Plan it. Think about it. What can we do to add a little bit more laughter, add a little bit more sharing, a little bit more affection, a little bit more of all the, it
It's a
should,
warm journey.
yeah, make that journey as warm as,
Wine,
yeah.
all right, great. All right. So I want to apologize for the heaviness of this stuff. It's a bit heavy, but it's what we build with. Let's take the lead. in this.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Samantha. Yeah.
So I added all the sugar to that. Something to say. Every.
No.
Picture.
Is
Yeah, the people
Everyone?
It's a journey.
And I see a woman's,
Side of,
oh my
yeah.
God.
I'm working.
each one is. Learn a lot and it's healed. This one I went crazy for.
Oh, yeah.
Never know that-
Thanks, very good. You know what I?
Unreal.
And then I took me a
No,
very
no,
long
no,
time
no,
going to hear it has the word Vayiti.
Oh.
So I'm not gonna give it to me a long time. And some people see it in 10 seconds. It's like the lady with the feather.
Right. Okay, I don't see it. I'm gonna look for it.
And then I'm gonna show you
You
this
really
that I
learned
sent
a lot
Katie.
about style,
Yeah.
about artists. Yeah, well, yeah.
Look at this. He sells.
No, go next.
Hello, Parasha posters. He sells
Wow.
posters.
Wow.
Somebody in my-
Thank you. Chag Sameach. See you.
It's like
Wow.
installation.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye. Great to see you. Thank you.
Did somebody leave a draft?
Because it's not expensive, you could take it with you to the future
How
library, whatever it is, you
exciting.
could sell the pashiyot, it's easy enough instead of the
Sell
Eshet Chayil.
Sarah, thank you. Great to see you. Thank you. Bye, Carol. Thank you.
Look at this, Lech Lecha.